Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk about a topic that I find is extremely important if you're about to be an exchange student, about to live in a different culture, and it is culture shock. So basically, let's talk about what culture shock is first. So to me, culture shock is realizing that things are different. And by things, I mean everyday things. That goes from really small stuff, like the plug-in socket is different, the temperature is put in different numbers, it's realizing that the school system works differently, it's realizing that people have different views about ethical questions, about politics, for example. It is realizing that people speak differently, it's realizing that people dress differently. So in general, culture shock means suddenly realizing that everything is very different from anything you're used to. How you can also describe culture shock is that you feel like you're playing a game that you don't know any of the rules to. So I come from Germany and I went to the southern states of the United States. And basically what happened to me right away was that I really felt like I was a player in a game I didn't know the rules to, because especially in the South, where it's quite a small town, quite conservative a lot of the time, there are lots of unspoken rules and people tend to be very nice and polite and sugarcoat stuff and don't tell you directly to your face what you're supposed to be doing and not supposed to be doing because they want to be nice. What that means, however, is that you actually make a lot of cultural mistakes. You do a lot of things that people from that culture wouldn't do. You do things differently, and that just leads to a lot of embarrassment, and you keep trying to catch up with this game and understand the rules, but you always find yourself kind of missing a bit of the rule book. So that is also culture shock, not really realizing what the correct way to do things is, because in your home country it's done differently. It is also disagreeing with values and how people choose to live their lives. For example, me coming from Germany, living in a small town in Texas, the way I was raised and the values I was brought up with, the values that I share with my family, are in many ways different to the values that I was presented with in small town Texas, for example. That is concerning politics, for example, so what we consider to be right or wrong in the legal system. It's also personal freedom questions, so what we consider to be right or wrong when it comes to sex. For example, in Texas, no sex before marriage is usually a big thing. You're only supposed to have sex after you're married with one person in your life. You're not supposed to be homosexual in Texas, for example, or have any sort of other sexual orientation besides being heterosexual. You're supposed to be usually of a Christian faith. All the things I'm saying, by the way, is really just related to my experience and really related to really small town, typical conservative Texas. So there will definitely be bigger cities or other states where this is totally different, but my experience is really small town Texas. So these were things that I was seeing there and that I was used to. Gun control is a big thing, for example, that I wasn't used to in Germany. And it's just, you know, figuring out that people are raised very differently. So many of the people that you will go to school with, for example, believe in different things that you will believe in, and many of their families will live with different ethical and different political standards than your family at home does. So that is also culture shock when it comes to the small things, but also the really big kind of overarching things as well. What culture shock also is learning about and appreciating one's own culture. So seeing that everything is different, you will learn a lot about your target culture, but it will also make you learn so much about your own culture, because for the first time in your life, you will be able to look at your own culture from the outside, which you never get to do when you grow up in a country and you just stay there your whole life. But it will make you appreciate and also just look more objectively at your own culture. You'll realize what your own culture even is, because when you're just living in the country, it's hard to put it into words, but when you're outside of it, you will actually be able to put it into words. So that is kind of what culture shock is. And it will usually happen after a few weeks or months in your target country, because the first couple of weeks there's just so much information, you're just so excited, it's just a whirlwind of emotions and information, so your brain won't really have the time to digest it and think about it. But culture shock sets in when you kind of settle in. So I would say maybe after 6 weeks or so, and then you will realize how different everything is and how it's hard to kind of settle in because, again, you don't know all of the rules. So that is something to expect. What a lot of people actually don't expect is that there's also something like reverse culture shock, which means that you will also experience something similar when you're coming back home. Obviously, you know your own culture better than the culture you just went into because you grew up in it and everything. However, it can also be even even more shocking at times, because when you're coming home, you expect to know everything. I mean, it's the life that you lived for years and years before. The people are all the same. Your school is probably still the same. However, what has changed is actually you. And when you change, when you come back to the same old, you will look at it with different eyes. So then you will have something that's called reverse culture shock. And you can describe it as putting on different glasses. So if you're looking at your own culture without any glasses, it looks like the normal world. But when you go to other places like the US, for example, and you come back after a year, it's almost like you're putting yellow glasses on. And through yellow glasses, everything looks different. So that's how you can also describe it. And you will start reflecting on your own culture and whether everything you believed in and everything you took for granted is actually supposed to be like that, is actually right. You will question a lot of your values, a lot of how your family brought you up, and it will just start a whole new reflection process on the life you always used to lead, but now you see it with different eyes. It will lead you to disagree with a lot of the stuff that your country does, your culture does, your friends do, that your family does, because you will have this new set of glasses on almost. So you will have interesting discussions with your parents. You might open up their eyes in many different ways as well. And yeah, you will just have a lot of conversations that are about culture once you come back. It will also mean that you will probably get made fun of after you're back, because you will suddenly dress differently because you've adapted to the style that was present in that country, because you mix in different words or maybe sometimes even an accent of your target country because you've spent so much time living there. You will talk about topics that were really relevant in your target country which might not be relevant at home. You will get made fun of in a loving way a bunch of times after you come back, and after a few months, I would say maybe after 2 months, you will find this balance between both of your kind of selves, both of the different cultures that are kind of you at this point, because you will have your old culture and also the culture from your target country. But yeah, you will have lots of little fun moments of discussions of cultures. You know, after those 2 months, you will find what I would call a new normal, and you will find that your entire perspective will be enriched. It will be a lot of hard work going through these 2 phases of culture shock, but it will make you end up with an experience and with a perspective that is new, that is broad, that is so much more open to the world in its many facets. So culture shock and reverse culture shock can be a bit hard at times, it can be a bit confusing, but overall it's extremely beneficial to your development and to the development of your perspective and your opinions and how you see the world. So I hope that I was able to explain what you can expect from culture shock and also reverse culture shock. But I know this is a very specific topic, and if you haven't experienced it, it's hard to understand sometimes what it can be like. So if you have any sort of questions either about culture shock and also about reverse culture shock, if you're about to enter your exchange year or you're just about to come back, for example, please drop me all of your questions down in the comments below. I will be happy to talk more about this topic, but I'm hoping that I was able to introduce and prepare you for this happening a little bit in this video. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch, and if you like this content, please make sure to subscribe and also to hit the notification bell so you never miss out on when I post next. And that is all I have for you guys today. See you in my next video. Bye bye!